This is the Fearless Experience with Brendan P. Keegan. Conversations with leaders who provide valuable, candid insights from their journeys and share their secrets to what made them successful and fearless.
Today's guest, Andrew Braithwaite, Managing Director at Cynosure Group. He has had an incredible career from Carlisle as well as Barclays Capital, where he has invested in numerous companies across many different industries. And we're going to tease some of that out today and learn how you too can become an investment banker from between the pipes as a goalie at Merrimack College. So I know that's going to make Andrew smile, and it did. But going from NHL prospect to banker to private equity managing director, pretty impressive. Andrew, welcome to the Fearless Experience.
Thank you, Brendan. Happy to be here.
All right, you're looking sharp there today. So let's kind of start with what I just teased out there a little bit. So aspiring NHL goalie, right? By the way, Bruins fan, and we just gave Jeremy Swayman a huge contract, and he ranked 42nd goalie in the league this year. So if you still got any saves in you, we'd like you here in Boston. To investment banker. So I got to ask, what drove you to a career in finance?
It's a good question, though. The finance world was always of interest for me. My parents actually both grew up in healthcare, so nothing to do with finance, but my father spent a lot of time investing on the side, and I got to see that. And it quickly dawned on me that this is a great way to compete. It's a great way to be analytical. It's very easy to see whether you're winning or losing. And I always sort of parallel path that with hockey. And so eventually ended up at school just outside of Boston, and they had a great business program. And so I was able to continue to parlay that, and eventually made the decision that, look, this is what I wanted to do long term. It was a lot of fun on the hockey side for a long time, but this was the next chapter for me. So it was an exciting move.
Do you remember what your save percentage was in college by any chance?
I don't, but probably not good enough to keep playing after college. So,
all right. So let's go with like 925 then. Let's just throw that out there.
That sounds pretty good. So
let's go with that. Okay. So you came out of college, and correct me if I'm wrong, but did you go to Barclays? Or was that your first stop?
It was.
So just talk to me. How did you get to Barclays? What did you do at Barclays? And to some of our listeners out there that might want to do something in finance, or hey, I hooked you up with a college goalie recently to do some mentoring. Maybe he's listening, and how would you tell Jack how to get into Barclays Capital?
Yeah, look, so I was at what they call a non-core school, and I did the only thing I knew what to do, which was talk to lots of people, network a ton. Every time you talk to somebody, ask them, are there 2 or 3 other people I should talk to? And I started that during sophomore year, actually, continued it through sophomore, junior, and even into senior year. And eventually, got some interviews, and then it was up to me to perform. And that's, I always ask folks, hey, can you help me at least get that interview? Can you get my resume in the right pile so it's at least looked at? And then it's up to you to perform. And I was fortunate enough to get my resume in a couple of good piles, and the interview process went well, and ended up at Barclays, which was a lot of fun for a lot of work, but a lot of fun for a couple of years. So.
Yeah. So, you hit a few interesting things there. You said, non-core school. By the way, the new lingo for that is non-target school.
Okay. That's good to know.
Just my daughter's going into investment banking, and she went to school in Scotland. And I can tell you, any school in Scotland is a non-target school if you're trying to go to Wall Street. And you should have been in the room when I explained that to her.
I grew up in Canada. I had no idea. I just, growing up in Canada, all the schools are pretty good schools if you get in. And so I assumed they all would be targets, and quickly learned that that's not the case. And then, worked hard to get your foot in the door. And once you do, it's really performance driven. At that, like, no one cares about what school you went to once you get your foot in the door. It's all about performance. So
No, so it's like what I just want to hover here because I think there's a lesson, and I remember having a we're over in the UK, we're at the British Grand Prix, and my daughter and I are kind of mixing it up, right? And I'm like, "You're at a non-target school." She goes, "I didn't know it was a non-target school." I go, "It's Scotland. What do you mean you didn't know?" And I said, "Hey, here's the deal. Had you gone to an NYU or a Princeton or a school, that's a pipeline right through the front door, potentially of Wall Street. Now you have to perform, right?" I said, "But there's a side door, there's a window." She said there was a chimney, which I found interesting. And we just had the conversation of there's traditional ways to hit a goal, to get somewhere you want. And you might have made a decision in your life that you put you on a non-traditional path. And in your case, and in my daughter's case, it was a non-traditional path. And it's like, so then what do you do? Networking. And you just nailed it. It's like you just say, great, I'm going to get out there. And I think the second thing I want to extract from what you said, Andrew, is you said you'd meet with somebody, and at the end, instead of saying thank you very much, have a good day, sending them a little text or an email that said I really appreciate it, you said, are there 2 or 3 other people I could meet with? And I think you just gave this golden nugget to people without even realizing it. But like, if the power, if you get, from your parents or your friend group or your friends' parents, maybe some of your friends' parents are in that group, you get 1 or 2 people to network with. And if you turn 2 people into 6, and then you turn 6 into 30, and Andrew, just like what a great little comment you made there for people to kind of take away from.
it's also it's an easier ask as well. You're just asking for an introduction. And it could be to pick their brain. It could be, hey, who are some people you think can impart some knowledge on you, and people are generally happy to make those introductions. It's not, hey, can you give me a job? And that's a harder one. And I do talk to sort of up and coming students from time to time, and I always impart that advice. They usually don't ask me for 2 or 3 people at the end of the call, and I usually remind them, "Did you forget something?" And then they say, "Oh yes." Do you have 2 or 3 people? And it just builds from there. So
So I'm curious. You seem to have a little bit of a teaching style about you. Has anyone ever told you that before?
not directly, although we just finished offsite, which was heavily focused on talent development and people, and over time, uh, I have found the most important piece of what we do is the talent side, both the talent side at our portfolio companies and the talent side internally, and developing that talent is what I believe will lead to success for myself, success for our company, success for our people. And so the teaching and talent development side has become a really, really big and important piece of my life.
Yeah. No, it's something that I think, whether you realize or not, it just kind of comes natural the way you've even just answered a few of these questions. So you're at Barclays and you go to Carlisle,
Mhm.
small private equity firm, right?
It's, I think a couple people may know it.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, is Carlisle it's in the top 5 now, maybe 4th or 5th, right? It's like, who's raised the latest fund type of thing. So a top 5 firm. So just walk us through what made you decide, hey, it's maybe time to leave Barclays. I want to go from investment banking or banking over to private equity. And what made you pick Carlisle, and how did you do it?
So you're going to hear a recurring theme in here, a little bit of networking in there as well. That
That's a
uh,
theme, Andrew.
got an interview for myself, and once again, it was up to you to perform. Why private equity? For me, it was an opportunity to work closer with management teams, to be a little bit more ingrained in the business and get exposure to the operational side of the business versus the investment banking side, which was much more sort of advisory. It was, once you help them, they were sort of done and moved on. On the private equity side, it was an opportunity to build relationship, to be part of companies longer term, and to help them grow and succeed. And you sort of mentioned that teaching component of it. I can't say that I'm necessarily teaching any of our companies, but if I can be a thought partner and be in a support role with them, I find it really, really enjoyable. So,
So when you talk about, so as an investment banker, you're perhaps maybe, and I don't mean this negatively, a little bit more transactional. You're getting a deal done. You're helping them raise equity. You're helping them raise debt. You're helping them sell a company, do an acquisition, and then you move on.
yeah.
In private equity, you're saying, hey, we're signing up for a long period of time to be your partner, to help you grow, transform, and meet your vision that you have as a management team.
You're spot on, and I'm sure we'll get into what I do today, but it has evolved more and more into what you just articulated, which is in today the building for long term success and helping shape and influence that vision is a really big piece of what we do today. And so, what was an incredibly great experience at Carlisle has morphed into more and more of that sort of partnership development mentality that I really enjoy.
So hey, let's jump into what you do right now. So you went from, arguably like the equivalent. I started my career in a Fortune 100 company, 86, and then I went to a startup. And mine was an extreme big to small. Yours was much more moderate, but you went from top 5 private equity firm in terms of just pure size to Cynosure Group. Like what made you decide you wanted to go to this particular firm, and tell us about your role that you have today and what you do.
Yeah, it was Carlisle was a great experience. It's a large institution, and joining Cynosure in its sort of infancy to build something was really exciting. It was an opportunity to be a little bit more entrepreneurial, to help shape the vision of the firm, to help build out team and strategy. And it's the strategy side where there was a core group of us that came over that saw a real opportunity. We saw a real opportunity to partner with founders and management owners who really believed in what they were building, who were really excited for the future, and who were looking for a partner and not an exit. And all too often, traditional private equity is buy, control, oftentimes replace management, oftentimes build for a couple of years and sell it. This was something very different. This was, can we partner with great owner operators, indifferent to where we play in the capital stack, indifferent to ownership level? Can we find the right solution for them? Can we help them have success? Can we help them build their business? And can we do that for the long run? And we take a much longer term view to business building. We're making decisions that might not pay off for 4, 6, 8 years, 10 years. But if the long-term ROI is there, we'll have that conversation. We're not in a hurry to exit if we can continue to partner and jointly be successful. And we have now, I think people are starting to catch on a little bit, but for a long time, we would have this conversation with founders who would just say, I had no idea this even existed, that this was even an option. And so, we've been working hard to try and get our sort of message out there in the market. But it's been very fruitful thus far, and has led to some very great partnerships.
Well, let's talk about that. So I'm gonna steal your motto, I believe, helping good people do great things. Did I get that right?
You did?
Okay. You know why I got it right? First of all, good marketing. You kept it simple. It wasn't this paragraph that I had to write down and read. Helping good people do great things. So as a private equity investor, and by the way, if I just walk out my house and walk down Main Street and I ask 10 people, what do you think of private equity? It's mixed. There's some people like, oh, they're going to invest in your company and steal it. They're going to invest in your company to do this. And by the way, which I always tell people, have you had any experience? I've had a chance to work with, 5 different private equity firms as a CEO, and it's just not true. I mean, there are ones that are more difficult or more challenging at, the exit and stuff, but they're not there to steal your company from you. They're there to get a good return. And, I always tell people, the key to being a good partner of private equity is hit your numbers, like do a good job. Like if you do a good job, but so, but what I want to dive into is, once we debunk that, private equity is very good for the economy and very good for people. And it's interesting how many people with one conversation feel that way, and anyone who's had experience. But now take me into Cynosure, like what are your core values at your firm that make you different?
I'll touch on a couple of things. I think first, the type of people we are looking for, I think it's important to highlight. We are looking to partner with folks that yes, they've got a great vision, but they're team oriented, they are drivers, they are curious, and so it's a certain type of business owner that we're looking to partner with. And it's those folks that we believe we pair up with the best. Those are the same values, for what it's worth, that we aspire to be internally as people as well, right? Team oriented and drivers and curious. And when it comes to that partnership, there are a handful of things that we're focused on. We're focused on alignment, right? That just makes things easier. We're all rowing in the same direction. Transparency, integrity, and being available, reliable, and supportive. And once again, it's not our business at the end of the day, even, and that's our belief, even if we own control. It's not our business. It's the founder's business. It's the management team's business. And we want to be a partner to them and help them achieve success. And if we get alignment right and they achieve success, we will achieve success. And, the same thing goes for our investor base, right? Where a lot of them are they don't need the money. They're doing it for multi-generational reasons, or they may be foundations who are giving away for decades to come, right? They're in this for the long run as well. And so pairing up the sort of long-term mentality investor base with the long-term business building approach, that alignment is really powerful.
So a number of things you said there: alignment, transparency, integrity. I wrote these down. Available, reliable. Talk to me about alignment. What have you ever got alignment wrong, and what do you do if you do become unaligned for whatever reason? It could have been COVID unaligned you. It could be a leadership team member. It could be the economy. Who knows? But I mean, unalignment happens. So like, what do you do?
Yeah, so maybe to start, we've got flexibility in how we structure deals, so they're not all just straight common equity. And when you move away from common equity, you do end up with some structural misalignments. And so the starting place is, back to transparency, is having that conversation, making sure all the parties understand where there can be misalignments in the future, to the extent we all know them. Now, we may end up with misalignments that were unknown in the future, and that's where, if you do everything else we sort of talked about and you are a good partner, you can work through it. And look, it won't be necessarily perfect every single time, but if you partner with the right sorts of people and you treat that relationship in a certain manner, you can work through that together. Right? There may be some misalignments, but you can work through that together. And so, once again, I don't want to say everything is perfect. There have been some structural misalignments that we all went into eyes wide open. There have been some misalignments that have come up over time for non-structural reasons. But I think if you called any of the founders we partnered with, I think they would all say, hey, they were really good partners to work through that with.
Yeah. No, alignment's a really important one. Having never been in private equity, but been on the operating side as a CEO, there's just times your leadership team becomes unaligned. Mm-hmm. It could be as simple as, you're launching a new business and you got one member that isn't sure you should be doing it. And I've always found the key to non-alignment is like leaning into it, having a conversation and saying, hey, we're not aligned on starting a last mile business. Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me, why aren't you on board? and then you learn some things. By the way, you probably learned some things. It's like, why didn't you bring that up in the meeting? We should be looking at that. And then, the flip side is once you decide that's where you're going to go, you got to have that conversation to say, hey, we really need to align. And the train's going this way.
Mhm.
And this is where we need to go. And I've found even when people haven't loved that conversation, like they get on board because they had their opportunity to say, hey, I'm not on board. I'm not aligned. You got a chance to influence them to be online, but then ultimately you gave them a choice and said, hey, let's go. And it's no different than being a goalie and your defenseman in front of you are not aligned on a certain night, and you're like, guys, like, what's going on? They got breakaways, they got dangerous shots. I got to get you guys in the right position out there.
Yeah, look, you're a team at the end of the day, and you said it really well, which is you're not always going to agree,
Yeah.
but you're going to talk it through, and you're going to align, and you're going to push forward, and that's all you can do. And I think it's that notion of partnership and what I'll call healthy tension that I think leads to better outcomes at the end of the day, more thoughtful conversations, and so once again, may not be 100% aligned on every single decision, but I think people rarely are. And so talking through it and being a partner in it, I think leads to better outcomes.
Yeah, and I think you just said something. You're almost never going to be 100% aligned. Like that's
Yeah.
just it's a little unnatural. So okay, so let's come back and let's talk about you and your career. Let's go back a little bit. We talked a little bit about private equity. We talked about where you've been. So you kind of started climbing the mountain in investment banking. Grabbed your backpack, jumped over to the private equity mountain. You climbed to the top of that. Can you talk to me about some challenges that you've faced that other people will face if they're trying to get to become managing director someday?
This will be an overgeneralization, but you're going to face challenges every day in what we do. You're going to face challenges with people. You're going to face challenges with investments. You're going to face that could be challenges post closing a deal with the management team. It could be challenges in getting a deal done. There's just hopefully this doesn't come across as overly negative or draconian, but there's challenges every single day, and it's what you do with those that are going to decide whether you continue to climb or not. It's you gotta persevere and pick yourself up. And fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know a better answer than that other than keep going. So
Do you have any tips? Like, so you've had to pick yourself up because you're in a world where, no one's talking by your office and picking you up. You're like, how do you pick yourself up? So you just had a deal fall apart. You worked on a deal for 6 months. It falls apart and you're sitting in your office and it's 9 at night. It's 10 at night. It's 9 in the morning. Like, what do you, Andrew, do? What tips can you give us that, like, how do you pick yourself up when the challenges hit and pieces fall apart?
for me, sleeping on it's really helpful. It's usually not as bad the next morning. So sleep on it before you react to anything is one. Yeah, hopefully for the people listening, they've got a person or two in their life that they can talk through it with. I think oftentimes talking through it is incredibly helpful. I'm sure people have reciprocated that with you, where you're coaching somebody or telling them it's not so bad, or talking through it with them, and they quickly realize, hey, it's not so bad. So that'd be the second. And the third is, I just don't know a different option other than to pick yourself up and keep going. Like, the alternative is throwing in the towel or dwelling on it, and it's just not helpful. And so while it may be frustrating and you may get discouraged, the only option that I really understand or know is to pick up and keep going. So
So there's a relentlessness inside you that just says, okay, we got to figure it out. Like, we either the deal is dead or we're going to resurrect it. And, I've gone through 6 exits. And one thing I tell my leadership team is I give them 10 rules of exits before we exit. And one rule is every deal dies once.
Mhm.
just, and the team goes, they go, what do you mean by that? I go, the other side's going to walk away over some deal point. At some point, it's going to be dead. And true story, April 6th is a celebration every year that I have of my career's biggest epic failure, where at 3 p.m. we were signing to sell one of my companies. The next morning at 8 a.m, I went and watched my son's lacrosse game. I always leave my phone in the car at his game, so I don't watch it. I come back and I get a voicemail that says the deal's off. And I was like, wait, like what happened? And it was out. We just had one last investment committee and boom. And it's interesting you said sleep on it, because I had to reach out to, our board, our leadership team. And I still remember it was a Wednesday afternoon because his games were Wednesday. And I said, okay, we're going to meet Friday morning at 8 on it. But we all just need to take time, because it was a big deal, but it was interesting. You said sleep on it. And I just nodded because I was like, yeah, you just got to take a deep breath, because it's too easy to like stare at it. And I think if you stare at it immediately, you make it bigger, or at least I make it bigger. My mind starts racing and I'm going in all different places. And next thing I know, it's like, I just need to just stop and just take a deep breath. As you said, sleep on it. And I look back at that and that epic failure. And I was so glad for taking that like 24 hours, 36 hours, because it made Friday morning such a sane meeting. I think if I had said, hey, let's all get on the phone tonight at 7.
It would have been chaos. It would have
been. But you know what it would have been is why this, why that, this, that. It would have been emotional. And I don't think it would have been helpful. So some good advice. Sleep on it, talk to someone, and then just look at it as there is no other option. We're figuring this out.
Look, on the sleep on it, I don't always take my own advice, but I do try and remind myself from time to time. So.
Well, I like that. It's true. Sometimes we're good at giving advice. Sometimes you might sleep on it, but you might sleep like less tidy. It might be
you might take the night and not sleep, but yes.
Yeah. So if we look at your career, so we just kind of talked about challenges. Flip me over to, at the beginning of this conversation, you said you in your profession, you win and you lose, and you get to see that. So we just talked about some challenges. Talk to me about some of your wins. What do you consider, and don't be humble here, we're trying to like help people understand what it's like to be an MD. Like, what are some of your biggest achievements you've had in your career?
Look, there's a few things that I'm really proud of. One, our investment performance to date has been really strong. We've generated returns that I think have been really compelling for our investors, and given the alignment, it's been really compelling for the management teams we have partnered with. So I'd say just sort of overarching performance has been one of those highlights. I think more importantly, being part of the management team's success, helping them grow their business, seeing them succeed is really, really rewarding. And so we've had a number of businesses that have been incredibly successful. We've got a number of businesses now that are incredibly successful. And so just being part of that and helping them grow, develop, build their business is incredibly rewarding. And then secondly, same thing goes for the team here at Cynosure. And, when I came over, we were a meaningfully smaller firm than we are today. And so being part of growing something, watching the team grow, watching the team be successful, I would say that's probably what excites me the most.
That's great. And you have grown. So have you had mentors in your career? And, do you mentor others? And what's your whole thoughts on mentoring?
I've certainly had some over my life and have some today, and continue to try and add people into that network for myself. Lots of people out there with tremendous experience, tremendous insight, tremendous wisdom, and so surrounding yourself with them, I think, is incredibly valuable. And I've always been happy to do it for others, and I just think it's something that is really good for society, and growth as a society. So
So if we're talking to a group of if you had a group of 30 young investment bankers, finance types, maybe even in private equity, on sales and trading desks, and you had 30, 40 of them in the room right now, and they asked you, Andrew, what advice would you give us? We're 23, we're 24, we're 25, we're 1, 2, 3 years into our career. What advice would you sit in front of that group and give them?
We had a group of people here a couple months ago, so relevant
Perfect,
question.
perfect.
Um, there's a few things I would say, and it obviously depends on the group, but maybe the highest arching piece is, make sure you're doing what you like to be doing. Um, Investment banking and private equity is not for everybody. I think a lot of people go into it just because they think they need to go into it, and so if you don't enjoy it, don't do it. Second thing I'd say is, uh, when you're starting your career, you've got the least amount of responsibility. Work really hard, like just and investment bank is probably a good area to because they'll work you 100 plus hours a week for as long as you'll keep doing it. And so get as many hours as you can in, learn as much as you can. You'll take huge strides forward with your career. And then the other arching piece that we've talked about is, you know get out there, network, talk to people, and go after what you want to go after. It's not no one's going to give it to you. So
Oh, it's interesting. So your second point there, work really hard, and you hit on a topic there. You're 22, you're 23. At that point in your life, you truly have the least amount of commitments in
Mhm.
your life. And I'm working on a book right now, and the book is called Conscious Balance, and it actually talks about that. That says, you know, working 80 hours, and it doesn't. I'm using this. I'm bringing this analogy in with you. Working 80 hours or 100 hours when you're 22 and you're single is very different than when you have three kids, four, three, and two,
Mhm.
and you're married. And somebody could say, "Oh, that you're way out of balance," and but like at 22, you could be like, "I'm not out of balance." Like, I have a boyfriend, I have a girlfriend. On the weekends, I play in a soccer league. On Sundays, I'm focused on my career right now. So, but in the book, I talk about you can't put one paradigm on what work life balance means. Is because work life balance means something different at 22, at 32, 42, 52. And just age. You get married, you have kids, and you want to go to their hockey games. Well, that says, well, you're probably going to have a hard time working 100 hours a week and run all over Western Canada watching your kid play hockey. Um, so it's interesting you say that, because it's something that when I talk to young people, I talk about. I said, you're at the opportunity where you can literally work the hardest in your career, and no one's going to suffer. I mean, your roommate's not going to be like, "Where were you last night? I was waiting for you." Um, and it's also the time where your learning curve can absolutely be the steepest. Where, and it's a rep thing. If you work 40 hours, you're going to learn 40 things. If you work 60 hours, you're going to learn 60 things. And by the way, if anyone's out there saying, "Hey, these guys are trying to work us," no, it's like, you're young, and if this is the field you want to go into, that's what it's going to take. Um, okay, so you got your backpack, you got your private equity backpack on. You're at the top of the mountain out in Salt Lake City in New York. So you're up on those mountain peaks, and you're looking out. You're at the top. What keeps your juices going? What keeps you fired up to find the next deal, help the next management team, raise the next round of capital? What where do you get your juice?
There's a sort of common theme throughout, but I really enjoy what we're building here, and we're growing quickly as a firm, and that excites me. And our team keeps growing, our team keeps having more and more success, keeps developing, and I find that incredibly energizing as well. And so, um, it's the business building side of what we're doing that I really enjoy. It's the business building side of our portfolio companies. It's our team. All those things excite me, and that's why I keep working the way I'm working. So,
All right. So Andrew, helping good people do great things, pretty cool motto. If we have some entrepreneurs out there and some founders, and they want to, they kind of like some of the helping good people do great things story. They like hearing the alignment and the transparency and the integrity. How do they find more out about the Cynosure Group?
they can go online. We've got a website. We've got all our email addresses on it as well. It gives more color. Cynosure is a much broader organization than the only partnering with founders standpoint. There are a couple of other business lines on the wealth management side, and there's a side that advises foundations on their portfolios, and there's a hedge fund. But the area where I spend nearly all of my time is the partnering with founder side, and there's a portion of the website dedicated to that. It provides a little bit more color on our strategy and approach. It provides insights into all of the management teams we have partnered with in the past, and you can contact us. As I said, our email address is up there as well, and we'd love to hear from founders, even if it's just to have a conversation. So,
Yeah, hey, everything starts with the conversation.
that's right.
And
That's right.
and I have to thank you, Andrew, for today's conversation on the Fearless Experience. I really appreciate you being on. Hey, to our audience, this is Andrew Braithwaite. He's managing director at Cynosure Group. Spent time at Barclays. Spent time at Carlyle Group. Shared wisdom with us on how to climb those mountains. One of the takeaways that I kept hearing throughout was network, lead with a core set of values, be approachable, and be aligned. So, Andrew, thanks for being with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Take care.
This has been the Fearless Experience with Brendan P. Keegan. If you want to learn to live and lead fearlessly, go to brendanpkeegan.com.